Is the Nikon Coolpix L340 digital camera the best camera under $100? We're going to find out. This camera was released by Nikon in 2015 as the budget pick in their bridge camera line. It's currently Amazon's top reviewed Nikon camera of all time with over 2,200 reviews. We're going to evaluate the Nikon Coolpix L340's performance. We'll run it through various shooting situations and see firsthand pictures and video taken with the camera so you can decide along with me if it is the best. Number 1 is picture quality. The Nikon L340 has a 20 megapixel sensor and a 28x optical zoom, which gives the equivalent of a maximum zoom of 630 millimeters, which is far beyond the ability of most telephoto DSLR camera lenses. Historically, this range is great for outdoor shoots and anything in nature where there's a lot of distance between the subject and the shooter. All of the pictures that follow were taken in auto mode with the L340. The first pic is an isolated rock tower in the mountains of Arizona, about a 30-minute drive from my house. You can see it handled the sunlight well while still showing detail of the sandstone. The second is also shot in the mountains with a panorama shot with more mountain ranges behind it. Not much color here yet because we're in early spring and it hasn't started to green up. Next, we've got a lovely cactus enjoying the sun, and then a barrel cactus next. These barrel cactuses are about to fruit any minute now. I tried to take some pictures with many different areas to see how well and defined the L340 could get in the pictures. And this picture ended up great. The detail in these two pictures is outstanding, as we have a storm cloud behind the candle and a stuffed bison that you can see the details of the faux fur on really well. Number 2 is video quality. The Nikon L340 has 2 video modes, standard 480p and high definition, which in this camera they're calling 720p. But even on a big screen, it should look decent resolution-wise. Because of its small sensor and no in-body stabilization, cameras of this price point and size historically struggle with accurate and pleasing to the eye video capture. Let's see how the L340 does. The first video is of a small mountain creek in winter. Both video and audio directly output from the L340 with no editing. Just a slight pan downward, and you don't see much judder and shake. I find it best to be very steady and slow, or use a tripod to ensure smoothness in video, if video is one of your main focal points with this camera. So we're back indoors now and not great light, so you see the focal point is a little bit washed out, but otherwise it does pretty good. The downside to video on this camera is that if you use the zoom at all during video mode, it will struggle and hunt to focus. All of the videos shown up to this point were taken with no optical zoom used. This is what it looks like for the video using optical zoom. It sometimes focuses well and quickly, but especially as it zooms out, because it has to go from frame to frame to frame, it won't remain focused until the very end, and even then, because it's optically maximized, it takes a while to focus on the image. Number 3 is length of life. This is a critical piece of the equation. Every camera has a lifespan. Some cameras wear out faster due to poor build quality, lens issues, poor spring mechanisms, or who knows what else. Because my full-time job is buying and selling used cameras, I'm able to provide business level and first-hand data from my sales history going back for the last 4 years to see what return rates are by price points and by specific models. My data shows that I've sold 75 Nikon L340s in the last 4 years, and I've only had 1 return, and it was for buyer's remorse. So that gives it a return rate average over those 4 years for 1.33%. Now, when you compare that to my overall average of cameras of 4%, it's 2.5x better than its peers. And that indicates that its length of life is really quite high. One thing to watch and be careful of if you're looking at a camera like this used is because it uses AA batteries, you'll often see AA battery corrosion in the battery compartment. And what you'll see there is either oxidization in the metal, or you'll see blue or grayish powdery substance coming out of the batteries. Don't write it off yet. There's a lot of ways to fix it. I have a video entirely dedicated to how to fix this. It can take only 5 minutes to repair if it's repairable, and you just need a couple of tools to do it. Number 4 in the last section is comparison versus the competition. There are a handful of direct competitors at this price point. The Sony DSC-H300, which is a 35x optical zoom camera with a street used price of around $100, and the Kodak Pixpro AZ251 25x optical zoom camera, also with a street price of around $100. Now we're going to take a look at the Sony DSC-H300 and its picture and video capability. The DSC-H300 has a bit better zoom, which will result in a closer picture of our subject flower. But at 35x zoom, it looks good. The pink in the color is vibrant. As for zoom, it moves out smoothly, but you'll notice it takes substantially longer to autofocus than the Nikon L340 once it's reached its full zoom, so not so great there. The Kodak Pixpro AZ251 is next. Picture quality is good. 25x zoom, so it's not quite as close. The flower is also not quite as vibrant in its colors, but it does have good definition of the rocks. For video, you'll see a lot of rounding and degradation around the sides of the video, and despite being on a tripod, it had a hard time with minor vibrations fully extended. My take is that the Nikon L340 and H300 picture quality is similar, but in the video, L340 had a leg up, at least in the testing that I did. And keep in mind, to even make it as a competitor here, these cameras had to beat dozens of other models under $100 to get here in the first place, so they're both quite good overall. Moving on to final thoughts about if this is the best camera under $100. Picture quality wise, I found that the L340 had really good color accuracy, particularly if the flash wasn't on. It was responsive and quick to autofocus and take pics, except in full zoom it took somewhat longer. Not using the zoomer at moderate zoom length, it had generally a fast focus time. Number 2 is video quality. While only 720p, the L340 actually did quite well. But again, it only has 720p resolution, which isn't up to 1080p or even close to 4K standards these days. The video looks and works better with no optical zoom used if you can help it. Also, even though the camera has VR, which is vibration reduction, coupling it with a tripod for video helped out immensely in terms of smoothing out the overall video presentation. Number 3, length of life. The Nikon L340 has a 2.5x lower return rate than average, indicating generally high customer satisfaction. Any camera using AA batteries like this is prone to have corrosion, so try not to store batteries inside. Also, be careful. As with any other electronic device with a lot of moving pieces, this camera is not a super person or super camera. Try not to bump or drop it, as the lens housing is the most malleable part of the camera and it's prone to bending. Number 4, competition. The L340 edged out both the H300 and the Kodak Pixpro for video performance. The Sony DSC-H300 had similar quality pictures during testing. And just to repeat again, all 3 of these cameras performed well for the price. We're after all talking about $100 here. It's not a fair comparison, or apples to apples, to compare it to a $400 or $500 or $600 or $1,000 camera. So after going through all of the photo and video that we took with the Nikon L340 and the 2 other cameras, yeah, I would say that the Nikon L340 is actually the best camera available currently under $100. It's available in large quantities still on the used market and provides a good bang for the buck in terms of overall practicality. I'd say this camera is perfect for anyone looking for a budget camera that has a great optical zoom, can handle light video work. It's also a great option for first-time photographers, kids, or someone that wants to back up their phone or DSLR camera with a camera that's simply more than just a tiny point-and-shoot camera with no optical zoom. This camera packs a punch in terms of its overall optical zoom range, and it's one of the reasons why I've sold so many and I've used so many over the years. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to give it a like if you found it helpful, and please consider subscribing for more camera content.